Good to see you bright and early on this Monday morning. As you know, this week marks the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. Over this past weekend, it was announced that through Operation Tidal Wave, a joint effort between ICE Miami and Florida law enforcement agencies, nearly 800 illegal aliens were arrested during the first 4 days alone. Among those arrested were a Colombian murderer, alleged MS-13 and 18th Street gang members, and a Russian with a red notice for manslaughter. And on the other side of the country, in the early Sunday morning hours, DOJ and DHS together launched a joint raid of an illegal alien underground nightclub used by Tren de Aragua in Colorado Springs, Colorado. DHS took more than 100 illegal aliens into custody, and many drugs and weapons were also seized. Operation Tidal Wave is a preview of what is to come around this country. Large-scale operations that employ our state and local enforcement partners to get criminal illegal aliens off our streets.
Can you please let us know if and when the Trump administration is planning to suspend the writ of habeas corpus to circumvent these radical judges who are infringing on his Article 2 powers and to start shipping out illegals en masse?
I have not heard such discussions take place, but I can assure you that the President and the entire administration are certainly open to all legal and constitutional remedies to ensure we can continue with the promise of deporting illegal criminals from our nation's borders. And I also agree with the premise of your question, which doesn't happen in this room often, but I do agree with yours. It is absurd that the previous administration was allowed to allow 15 million, that we know about, illegal aliens into this country with very little pushback from our judicial branch. But this president is trying to simply enforce our nation's immigration laws and is facing roadblock after roadblock. So we're complying with court orders, but as Tom Homan has said every day, we're going to continue to forge ahead with this mass deportation campaign, and the president is open to all remedies to do that.
Caroline, can you tell us more about the meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky over the weekend? Did that meeting change anything? Did Trump leave that meeting thinking any differently about negotiations and next steps on this?
Look, the president talked about this after the meeting himself yesterday when he took questions from reporters on Air Force One. He thinks that he is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries. He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. I understand Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic as well. And both leaders need to come to the table to negotiate their way out of this. And I do think that the president meeting with President Zelensky shows that he is exuding a lot of effort and time into this because he wants to be a peacemaker president, which he was in his first term. He intends to do that again. And this is an incredibly difficult situation and conflict that President Trump inherited from President Biden, who allowed this war to start in the first place, but he's focused on solving this problem.
If border crossings are at a record low, why should it still be considered an emergency?
It's because of what has happened on the last administration. We got to ensure that not 1 ounce of fentanyl comes across the border to kill Americans. The president has declared the cartels in Mexico a terrorist organization, along with MS-13 TDA. They've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. It's an emergency till we shut it down. It's an emergency till the cartels are wiped off the face of this earth. President Trump's committed to saving every life. Now, I just mentioned gotaways, 38 yesterday. Who are the gotaways? Where do they come from? We had over 2 million gotaways under Joe Biden's administration. Why did 2 million people pay more to get away? Under the Biden administration, you pay a cartel this amount of money to cross the border. Cartel's job ends at the border. Just turn yourself in a green uniform. Get released in 24 hours. Get a free airline ticket to the city of your choice. Get a free hotel room. Get 3 meals a day. Get free medical care. Get work authorization in 90 to 120 days, which is the real reason they came here, because they didn't want to be vetted. They didn't want to be fingerprinted. We've arrested over 400 people on the terrorist watch list coming across the southern border in 4 years. How many of the 2 million came from countries sponsoring terror? If you think it's zero, then you're ignorant. This is the biggest national security failure this country's ever seen. This is the border emergency until we end it, end all of it. We're making good strides. Right now, it's still an emergency until we shut it down.
This is a question for Mr. Homan. Late last week, there were 3 U.S. citizen children who were removed with their mothers who were in the United States illegally. There have been a federal judge in Louisiana who was appointed by President Trump said that he was concerned that there was, quote, no meaningful process. Are you concerned that due process, at least for the U.S. citizen children, is being flouted and that the speed at which the enforcement is being done could lead to errors, as was the case in the Kilmar-Abreu-Garcia case? And then also if you could give an update on the deportation numbers under this administration and whether you're pleased with them.
First of all, I don't accept the term error in Abreu-Garcia. There was an oversight. There was a withholding order. But things have changed. The facts around the withholding order has changed. He is now a terrorist. We've seen the withholding order set aside. And the gang he was fearing from being removed to El Salvador no longer exists. So the facts around that case are totally different. I'll let the lawyers litigate that. But as far as the 3 USC kids, I'd said from day one that if you enter this country legally, it's a crime. If you remain in this country legally and you ignore a judge's order about deporting, if you choose to have a U.S. citizen child, knowing you're in this country legally, you put yourself in that position. You put your family in that position. What we did is remove children with their mothers who requested the children depart with them. This was a parental decision. Parenting 101. The mothers made that choice. And I tell you what, if we didn't do it, the story today would be Trump administration separating families again. No, we're keeping families together. So when a parent says, I want my 2-year-old baby to go with me, we made that happen. They weren't deported. We don't deport U.S. citizens. The parents made that decision, not the United States government. But I don't hear any questions about Lake and Riley had a mother. She's never going to see her child again. Rachel Morin, she had 5 children. Those children are never going to see their mom again. This administration is doing the right thing. Every public safety threat we arrest from this country and remove them, this country is much safer. So parents will make a decision what happens to their child. Having a U.S. citizen child does not make you immune from our laws. If that's the message we send the entire world, enter the country legally. It's a crime. Don't worry about it. Get order removed by an immigration judge. Don't worry about it. No one's looking for you. And have a U.S. citizen child and you're immune from our laws, you're never going to fix the border.
Can you give an update on the deportation numbers under this administration?
Mr. Homan.
What are you asking for? We just provided the
Update on
numbers.
the number of deportations that have occurred under this administration, whether you're pleased with that.
Last number I got was 139,000 deportation. Am I happy with the number? Numbers are good. Especially if you look at the ICE numbers. The ICE arrest removals are far beyond Biden. But I read the media. Oh, ICE, the deportations are behind Biden administration. Well, why? Because they counted border removals. We don't have 10.5 million people crossing the border. We don't have border removals. So Joe Biden could have deported 5% of his encounters, and numbers will still be higher than us on the border removals because we have a secure border, the most secure border in the history of this nation. Compare apples to apples, ICE arrests and deportations are far more than Joe Biden.
That's right.
Caroline.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Homan, talking about the border wall, can you give us an update as far as how many miles are being built today? And is Mexico paying for it, as the president said they were going to?
Well, first of all, I'll answer that question because I already answered it in my opening remarks. To date, since January 1st, there's been more than 85 miles of new border wall construction in various stages of that construction and planning. The president has made it clear to Congress that we want to see more funding for not just border wall construction, but also to support our ICE agents and our Border Patrol agents who are on the ground facilitating with this mass deportation effort.
So he's clear that Mexico is not going to pay for it? Is that what you're saying?
Let's address that. Trump said Mexico won't pay for the wall. They have in a roundabout way, have they not? Putting 10,000 military on the northern and southern border, taking the action they did to remain in Mexico. They didn't have to do that. They're doing it. Putting military on the southern border. Have moved illegal immigration to a record low. We're saving millions of dollars every day on detention, transportation, removal proceedings. We've more than made up for the cost of that wall because of the actions of Mexico. So is Mexico helping build that wall? Yeah, because we're saving so much money, millions of dollars a day, that we can afford to build that wall. So actually, yes, they're helping to build a wall.
John Helper.
Where the borders are, can you give an estimate as to how many individuals are in the United States illegally? That's number one, and I'm sure you're very familiar with that number, an estimate. And the second question is, I have a list that the White House put out of individuals, 100 ICE arrests since the beginning of the president's term, and the people are arrested for various very serious crimes. First-degree murder, convicted of rape, convicted of murder and aggravated burglary, sexual assault of a child. How many of the individuals that are in the United States illegally are people like this, really bad people?
Well, first of all, how many illegal aliens I think in the United States? At least 20 million. People say, where'd you come up with that number? We've been speaking about 12 million for 20 years. We know we got 10.5 that we know of came to the border. How many don't we know of? I talked about known gotaways at 2 million. How many unknown gotaways we have? Like between the Big Bend sector in Texas where there's no technology, how many 1,000 people dig across through there? We wouldn't know. We would know now. But, you know, so I would venture over 20 million. But your question is, last count, last I looked, there was about 700,000 illegal aliens with criminal charges walking the streets of this country. 700,000. And that's what we're looking for now. That's what we're prioritizing. Them and national security threats.
For Mr. Homan, I'm Taylor with Spectrum News. We have a station up in Rochester, New York. It was reported you're visiting there tomorrow. Can you talk a bit about the purpose of your trip? I know the Trump administration is suing the city over its sanctuary city policies, how the executive order Caroline alluded to ties into it, and what your message is for communities and community leaders who say, we're able to establish our own rules here, we're worried about this input from the federal level. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, same thing I talked about earlier. I don't think any elected mayor, any elected governor should want public safety threats, those illegally in the United States, public safety threats, walking through the community. And what happened in Rochester, HSI agent called for emergency assistance. Officers of Rochester PD responded to a call from emergency assistance from a federal law enforcement officer. They responded, then they got disciplined. I don't think anybody can come up with one instance where an ICE agent, a Border Patrol agent, didn't respond to an emergency call from assistance from any law enforcement agency. Cops need to help cops, especially in an emergency situation. But they got disciplined. And I met those officers down in Nashville soon after that. I think it was a couple of days after it. And I told them I stand with them. They did the right thing. Law enforcement responding to emergency assistance from law enforcement. So I'm going up there to support the men and women of law enforcement, the men and women who carry that badge and gun every day. They're working the streets at 2 a.m. while we're all sleeping. I'm going to give my support, and they just announced a lawsuit, and that's one of many. Sanctuary City is going to be sued on this administration for flouting immigration law. I mean, the law is clear, and they're violating it, and this administration is going to take actions. I'm going up there to show my support of men and women of law enforcement. I started as a cop. And the community, I'm showing support for them. Because the community wants their police officers to be officers too. The communities don't want public safety threats walking around their communities either. And that's what it's all about, and that's why I'm going.
Regarding the executive order on sanctuary cities, is the administration planning to pursue any more investigations or prosecutions like was done against the judge and was?
Well, we'd have to defer you to the Department of Justice, obviously, for specific prosecutions or cases against individuals. But as I said in my remarks, the executive order the President will sign later this afternoon does direct the Attorney General and also Kristi Noem, our great Secretary of Homeland Security, to provide a list of sanctuary cities in which local officials are not complying with this federal order and are not complying with federal immigration laws. It's quite simple. Obey the law, respect the law, and don't obstruct federal immigration officials and law enforcement officials when they are simply trying to remove public safety threats from our nation's communities. The American public don't want illegal alien criminals in their communities. They made that quite clear on November 5th, and this administration is determined to enforce our nation's immigration laws, and we're happy to provide the text of that executive order, and as I said, the President will be signing it later this afternoon.